75 hours later, 100% completion. The last song has been silked, and it's time for me to give my review on Hollow Knight Silksong. Let's get into it. We gotta talk about the Crest system. It completely evolved the game. I remember playing and I got my hands on the Reaper Crest for the first time and I was like, what is this? And then when I swung and I saw that my range was way further and the animation was different, the pogo was different, I was like, oh dude, this is amazing. I had never once crossed my mind that they would change up the moveset. But at the end of the day, you could just pick any of the crests they give you in the game and just do an entire run with it and it would work. And I think that's the beauty of it. Like, it's kind of like they give you options and it just whatever fits your style. The other really cool part about the Crest was like the memory lock, or I guess you can call it the socket system for the tools, where like some of them you could tell were prioritizing, like Architect prioritizing all of the red tools, whereas Wanderer prioritized yellow tools. And I guess you could say Shaman prioritized like silk skills and like blue tools. I don't think there was really anything. I guess Witch was like heavy on the blue tools because that one had 3. But you get my point. They all had different sockets for you to expand and specialize certain play styles. Like if you wanted to go Witch, you can go for, I think some people called it a nuke build in my stream, where you would like heal with like the mirror, the Wanderer's Bell, multi-binder, and it would like hit everything around you and go crazy, which I could not really get it to do that. But you know, like you could do that kind of stuff. I really like the Architect the most because I like the idea of running like double kunai, or like the slingshot for double projectiles, poison on top of that, so that now I'm doing double and I'm doing poison, and then I'm throwing kunai bombs at you. I'm throwing the single kunai, and then I could bind, and then I'm reloaded, and I'm just like it's just like a long range play style where you just bombard enemies down. And I really thought that was cool. I thought it was very, very powerful, so I didn't use it most of the time. The only time I felt like I had to use it was against the Watcher's Edge. That dude was ugh. But anyway, but you get my point. It's just that the Crest really allowed you to try out different stuff, or I guess you could still do what you want to do, but it just kind of encouraged you to go, oh, I need to look at these tools more and see how I can synergize these tools. Whereas in Hollow Knight, you can do it however you want to, right? And specializing still exists. It's just not as obvious. They made it very clear in Silksong, like, hey, try specializing, try focusing on these tools and see what you can do by color coding things and making it more pop out to you. And I thought that was a really cool change. Really cool quality of life stuff there. And while we're talking about tools, I want to hear from you guys. What are your favorite combos? But one of the things I wanted to talk about was how like the red and blue categories, I really, really enjoy them. Red gives you so much like variety. And it's just kind of cool because like in Hollow Knight, I kind of felt like I was mostly punching. And yeah, I would do my Desolate Dive or Wraith when applicable, maybe even shoot my beam. But like you kind of have those for the majority of the game. And I feel like in this game, the reds, there's so many options for you to switch up your playstyle, and some of the tools don't work very well against enemies. So you have to switch to something different, which I really like that you have to pay attention and say, oh, this isn't working. I really like that piece. But my point is just that, like, you know, you could drill down on enemies. You could throw the cogwheels. You could have the flies attacking. You could coach your weapon in fire. You know, it was just like, I'm just looking up here at the tools now. The electric one, so that I could have electric parries or maybe electric silk spears or thread storms. You know, like the tools, I'm just looking at the list here. They had a lot of cool stuff. There's a lot of cool reds. I loved just about all the reds. The grenades, the threefold pin was really good. Throwing ring was cool. They were really, really good. Or the Rosary Cannon. The Rosary Cannon was also, I thought at first I wasn't quite feeling it, but once I started running around pulling it out on them with the blicky, you know, it was actually pretty cool. And then the blue tools, was a lot of good variety there. I kind of touched on what the electric one, Druid's Eyes was good. Multi-binder with the quick bind is really strong, but I kind of don't really run that a whole lot unless I'm like exploring a new area. The mirrors were nice. I mean, you had a lot of good stuff. Weave Light, there was the Fractured Mass, Magma Bell was kind of section specific, but still good. Now with the yellow tools, I wasn't quite feeling the yellow tools as much. Like the compass, solid, 100%, right? Magnetic Brooch was very convenient. And then Magnetic Dice was very fun because it's almost like watching a YouTube video in the background or something. And you put on like the random boom over the course of like an hour and just hearing it randomly go off and you're like, haha, or whatever. It was like you get a little bit of dopamine when the dice goes off because you get hit and you're like, oh, dude, that doesn't count. And then sometimes you be on death's door and it hits and you're like, oh, that's amazing. I'm still in the fight. So like yellow for the most part, I didn't really like. Weighted belt was okay. I didn't want to mess with the bar bracelet. But I would say for the most part, I wasn't really feeling the the yellow tools, but like there were some good ones, but there was like a big gap between the good and the bad yellows, whereas red and blue, everything was elite. I like the quality of life change by giving us like a quest menu. Now, Hollow Knight 1 did have a quest system, but you couldn't really track everything. If you could, I just can't remember, but I don't think you could because I just played it like a month ago. But it was just a nice quality of life change. And then having all the different hubs you go to talk to different NPCs. It wasn't a lot, right? Because it was like Bone Bottom, Bellheart, and then you had like the hub up in Terminus near First Shrine. Or Citadel First Shrine. But still, having multiple places to go and visit and see them evolve and change over time was really cool. Things like navigating the map, which is something they kind of carried over from the first one. There was nothing wrong with it. I'm glad they kind of kept that system the same. Searching and exploring felt good. It's always rewarding because there's a lot of different things. There's so many tools to find. There's crests to find. You can find silk spools. You can find your mass shards, gaining special abilities like your drift cloak or the charge attack. There was always something good to find, even towards the end of the game when you start collecting mementos, which are just really cool little in-game boss fights to kind of give you a little bit extra lore or something like that. Even that stuff was cool. Building out your house, all that stuff was fun. The only thing I'll say about exploration is that some of that stuff was in too damn a crazy spot. How was I supposed to know that I need to hit the ceiling or need to jump off the corner of the ceiling to go up and get up into wherever? Like some of that stuff was a little too crazy, and I would have never found it without the stream. I think in the future, maybe if you clear an area, it would be nice if maybe if you clear the boss for an area, maybe it'll mark stuff so that you can see it. It just felt like if you didn't watch YouTube or you didn't stream or something, or you didn't talk to anybody, just like Elden Ring games or Souls games, it's very easy to miss that stuff. And I want to see everything. I feel like I'm missing out on cool parts of the game. But other than that, I still think it's cool to find it. Some of it was kind of a way bit easier, compared to Hollow Knight to find. So like it was better, but some of the stuff was really hard. But it is what it is. I really enjoyed the exploration. Before I get into the story, I just want to say that there was cool side activities too, which I really love when games have small breaks away from the usual gameplay loop. Not saying that every game needs to have a bunch of options, but just having a couple was good. And I think Silksong was in a good spot. The target practice thing, or like the target mini game that you get really early on in like Bone Marrow, I want to say it is. The names I'm tripping on the names. The Marrow. And then the flea stuff towards the end of the game where you have to juggle the fleas, where you have to dodge from getting hit, or the one where I think you just can't touch the ground. Those were all fun mini games, things that you kind of already do, but in a more goofy, non-intense setting. Really enjoy that kind of stuff. There was no Path of Pain, but I'm sure they will add some stuff like that. In-game stuff, like I said earlier, the mementos. I wouldn't say they were specifically designated as in-game, but I mean, you don't get them until the end of the game, so I guess that counts. Getting into the story, it was really exciting to see that Hornet was actually communicating back and forth with the characters. I'm not a big fan of the trope where your character just kind of stands there, and just blank, just stares, and the other person's talking to you, and they're just kind of carrying the conversation themselves. It's a little bit of immersion breaking. I think the idea is that you have your own thoughts about what they're saying to you, but all I think about is that my guy is not saying anything to them. So that's kind of what my thought process is. So Hornet, air quotes, talking to the NPCs was nice. I know she just makes some kind of generic Hollow Knight Silksong sound or whatever. But still, it was nice to see what her stance was, how she felt about certain characters, how she felt about the story. She stayed pretty hopeful throughout the entire game. Even though other characters were full of doubt, she was reassuring them like, hey, we're going to pull through this. And that was really cool to see. And you can't really see that from the Hollow Knight. So I really like that she was talking. I feel like that was a big, much needed change. The story was also a little bit easier to follow because she was giving her opinion and kind of explaining what was happening as the game was progressing as well. The story itself wasn't too complicated. You learn a little bit more about Hornet's past. You learn a bit about the Weavers. You learn about Farloom. You learn about this pilgrimage and how it's all a scam. And there's some kind of capitalist themes lied in there too. The story was low-key really good. It was fleshed out. I really think that the story was a big step up from the first one. I think the first one was fine. It's just you kind of have to really dig for it. Whereas they for the most part gave it to you, and you could fill in the gaps from like just seeing the environment, or maybe there's like tablets you would inspect or things like that, items, artifacts that would cue or fill in the details. And I really think the story was in a much better place. It was much more enjoyable this time around. Before I move on, I just want to make a note that I really did enjoy some of the character side story. I like seeing Sharma, and I think Sharma's a her, but I kept saying he. He reminds me, or she reminds me of BMO. But Sharma was kind of talking about, I have all this faith that the gods will protect me as I make my pilgrimage. And then finally, as you get closer and closer, Sharma starts to see that, hey, this isn't what I thought this was. The dream was to get here and we'd be in paradise, and here I am, and everything's falling apart. Has everything I've been doing a lie? And coming to that realization, I love that character development. It was cool to follow along with Chakra as she's tracking down her mentor, kind of learning about their tribe, a little bit about their culture, their customs and whatnot. I mean, it wasn't like too in your face. It was mostly optional, you know what I mean? But it was still really cool. I feel like it really fleshed out those particular characters. When I think back to Hollow Knight that I played a month ago, there's like two characters I remember, maybe three. The guy with the mask on his head, which I'm sure you guys will comment and tell me who he is. He's like the only character I remember. There's a guy that you saw in the Coliseum or maybe the Pantheon, and then there's like the lady who's a little bit bigger with the red mask on her head. Like those like the only characters I can remember. And I only remember that the guy was like on a journey to go back to like the seeker or whoever was like asleep or whatever. Like it's kind of fuzzy. And it's probably because it's been a month, but it's just their background just didn't really stand out to me the way Chakra and Sherma does, as well as like Gormand or even Lace. But you get what I mean, right? Their stories are way more fleshed out, and it was easier to remember it because there's a back and forth between Hornet and them. Now, I will say that maybe I just do a bad job of paying attention when it's just the character talking at me. I don't know, but I feel like their stories were really fleshed out. The world design, I would say, was more or less pretty similar to Hollow Knight in terms of like the way you move around and interact with it, which is, you know, the 2D moving up, down, left, right, diagonally for the most part. The environments were pretty diverse, and I really thought the snow section was cool. How you had to run from one section before you froze to death to get to the next. I really liked that. It wasn't like the gameplay changed a whole lot. It was just like there's a time pressure, a clock, if you will, to go from one part to the next as you make your way up the snowy mountain. Thought that was a really cool part that stood out. Another part that really stood out was the swamp, which, I mean, you're still platforming, you're fighting these annoying enemies. But if you fall in the swamp, now you can't heal, and it's even worse. And I thought that was also a really cool touch. They took, you know, the gameplay you're used to, and they just added a new element to spice things up. So there's even more pressure to not fall in the infested waters, or whatever you want to call it, the worm water. Blasted Steps was cool. Deep Docks, Hunter's March, man, those ants were nasty, but a really cool section running into traps. It really felt like I was being hunted. The Citadel was an amazing part of the game, a large part, of course, but the Citadel was really cool to kind of see what their aircraft heaven was like and to see, you know, their heaven was falling apart. And it was really cool towards the end of the game when you get into Act 3 where you see the abyss and all of that and how the world has changed dramatically. Pathways are no longer available. New places are open. You know, creatures being affected and seeing their new move sets and all of that. It was really cool to see the world in this game. It was really unique everywhere, and then to see it dynamically change was also a nice treat. Combat, this is a big one. This is probably a large percentage of the game. I thought combat was in a really good place. Enemies and bosses were both swinging for the fences. Pretty early out the gate, I was running into friction, which I love. I love having friction as I play the game. I don't want anything to really be, you know, smooth or like really easy unless I'm backtracking to a previous area, which even then I don't mind friction. But, you know, sometimes you want to see the fruits of your labor, right? Where you get all these upgrades and now you're smashing enemies left and right. But like, I don't want to get too strong where I'm smashing as I go through the unknown. So I like that the friction continued throughout the game. Like I said earlier, I really enjoyed the tools. Being able to switch up my playstyle was really nice, kept the game very fresh. Often I would find myself using Reaper for exploration because I could get heals back, you know, pop the bind, hit the enemy, get your heals back. And it just was good sustained, good long range to keep you safe. And then when it came time to fight gauntlets or bosses, I would find myself switching over to like Hunter or Beast. And I will say I did use Architect, but my problem with Architect is that it's good. It's just you burn through resources fast. And I didn't find, apparently there's a yellow charm that gives you like more resources or something that I just never came across. At least that's what the wiki says. But ultimately, if I was fighting a tough boss, I'd burn through my resources and have to go farm or whatever. I think the tools were cool. I think either just give us more shards or just take the shard limit off, you know, and maybe slightly drop down how much you can use so it's not quite as spammable. But overall, my point is that the combat was really fun. You know, it really breaks up the swing, hit. You know, like all you're doing is poke, you know, you're pogoing, you're attacking from the front, maybe you do a charge attack. You know, like that's it. But the tools allow you to do different things, you know, play defensively, you know, throw the attacks down, bait them into the attacks. Or like I said, you go on the offense and you're throwing stuff like crazy, buff yourself for more damage. You know, there's a lot of different ways to approach it, and it made combat really spicy. The choreography for the movement, Hornets, very graceful, pogoing, bouncing back in the air. Dash was really cool. Running full speed at your enemies was really nice. The claw line, being able to close the gap and hit enemies, or to jump in the air and close a gap on flying enemies, because my God, flying enemies are a nightmare. But, you know, it's just there's a lot more tools to engage and fight with, and the fights felt, you know, it's always felt like a dance, but it felt like a much more aggressive dance with, you know, having all these extra tools to be able to get in and get out that you didn't have with Hollow Knight. The bosses were amazing. Nobody felt like a copy paste. I think some of my favorites would be like the Khan. Him doing the coral bending was really sick. Carmelita was beautiful, very graceful. Last phase is a nightmare. I almost got her first try, but that last phase was a lot to deal with. The Widow was really fun for me to fight. I'm just looking at the wiki to look at all the bosses. Trovio was fun. Phantom was cool. I made a video about Phantom. Go check it out. Bell Bees, Lace, they were all good. The first center, there was a lot of good bosses in here. Watcher at the Edge was also a monster. Garmin was cool. Chakra. Chakra was probably my most disappointing fight, but maybe I'll make a video talking about that later. But yeah, all the bosses were unique, very fun. They definitely challenge you in different ways. Chef's Kiss, I loved it. I can't wait for Pantheon for Silk Song, assuming they do that, or some kind of boss rush mode, or just the option to go back and rematch the bosses now that you have all the stuff. Even a new game plus mode would be really nice. But yeah, I think they absolutely nailed the combat aspect of the game with the crest and the tool system. Really, really enjoyed it. I didn't really have any bugs or issues with the game. I had like one time where like my cocoon, like I was in the abyss and I died leaving it, and it was put in a weird spot where like I just couldn't get to it. Like it just visibly wasn't there. So I had to use a Silk Eater. And then one time I died in the ice area and I was like sliding in the air, but I still ended up like resetting anyway, it was weird. It was like I was dead on screen, but I was like in this weird sliding animation. But other than that, performance was good. It was really nice to play this in 120 on the Switch too. Maybe you could play it on 120 on PC. Let me know on that. I'm not sure. But it was really nice being able to, it was like buttery smooth when I got to play at 120. But yeah, that's it for me. I ended up giving the game a 9.2 out of 10. Hollow Knight got an 8.4. I have a whole rubric I use. And I mean, honestly, it would have hit a little bit higher, but I did have a couple of crashes on the game or a couple of weird bugs. So like it is a little bit down, but honestly, it's borderline perfect to me. There's very few things I would change about it. If you haven't checked it out, it's only $20. Definitely go play it. And if you haven't played the one before that, definitely play that one first. It's $15. That's easy 150 hours worth of gameplay to keep you preoccupied for a month or two. It's a fantastic game. Hollow Knight was my first like Metroidvania, this being the second, and they were both awesome games. Team Cherry, God bless you guys, giving us this kind of experience. It's been truly a treat. But with that being said, that's it for your boys. So make sure y'all like, follow, sub, repost, all that good stuff. Let me know what you think about the game, my review. Y'all stay safe out there. Peace.